For your information, our chair, Bill Horns, is not able to make it. He's asked me to chair today. So with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And the first order of business would be the roll call. I'm here. Troy?
Here.
Jason?
Here.
Bill's out. Michael?
Here.
And Gabriella? And Andrew's here. And we also have Chad Cole from FACT. Let me get to the agenda here. Steve, you're not here for a non-agenda item, correct? All right, so the first item of business then after public appearance is the approval of the agenda. I would like to suggest that we move up item 5A, consideration of election of a TTC vice chairman. Is there, do we need a motion or can we just agree?
Yeah, we need a motion.
Do you want a motion?
I move that we change the agenda item 5A to be the next item considered.
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so be it. So now, we can adopt such rules. We can allow the election of a vice chair. I don't think we need we do need a motion, don't we? So I'll move that we create the position of a vice chair for the Transportation and Transit Commission. Any seconds?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Okay, passes. Let's just open this up. Is anybody interested in being vice chair? I think that as an appointee of Plan Commission, I should not be a chair or vice chair here. Go ahead,
I will.
speak.
I'd accept the nomination.
If someone wants to do that.
All right, I'll nominate Troy Klein for vice chair. Is there a second? Or do I need a second?
Second.
All right. Is there anybody else interested, first of all? So let's take a vote then. All in favor of Troy being the vice chair signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes. Troy will now take over the meeting.
Can you adjust the next item there? Okay. All right. The next item is public appearances for non-agenda items. Is there anyone in the audience for a non-agenda item? Okay, the next item is 4, approval of the agenda. Have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Troy, if you could, try not to let your mask touch the microphone.
Oh.
I'll second.
All right. Okay. Discussion? Any discussion?
Not here.
Okay. Then we'll move to a vote. All in favor say aye of approving the agenda.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved. The agenda is approved. Next, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're up to, okay, 5 in here. Okay. Just do it. Sorry. We're now report from the department, and then we'll go straight into.
Okay, yeah, we already covered.
Okay.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, did we get a report from the department?
Yeah, no. Okay, the next item is 6, report for the department. Take it
everybody.
away.
I'm here tonight. Thanks, everybody else. So can you see my screen? Which screen can you see? That one. Awesome. Okay. Very good. So I don't have a whole lot. I'm kind of previewing everything I have on the presentation, but for the report from the department. So Fish Hatchery Road, as you know, last week got switched over. So now they are on the easternmost lanes, or what we're calling the northbound lanes. They're newly constructed, so all traffic's over there. We got the switch. They're on the 28th, like we said we would, and we're a little bit ahead of schedule. So I think everything's going pretty well, despite the usual hiccups. So, I think you'll note that most of the road for southbound lanes are now torn up, and so making good progress on that, utilities and whatnot. So West Lacey, so the design continues. We did have a couple kind of questions come up, in terms of accesses near the quarry on the west side. But we've gotten most of those cleaned up, and now we're expecting the updated traffic design in July, and then following that up with basically the 3D modeling of the grading in August. And so we should have a transportation project plat, basically a design to accompany that, to be referred out, hopefully by the end of August or the first meeting, council meeting in September. So, and then South Sain, so that project's also moving along. So that's, so we have the reconstruction project, which is starting up, the water main, and then the reconstruction south of Aurora is starting up here at the end of July. So water main first, then reconstruct, then roadway reconstruct after that. But the South Sain reconstruction project north of Aurora up to McCoy, that design continues. We met 5 times. Jason Strauss is on that with the advisory group. We've gone through all the project cross-sectional elements, talked through pros and cons. I think we made a lot of progress just kind of talking through some of the nuances and some of the, the little intricacies of the corridor. I guess the biggest issue so far is we create a revised project cost just to kind of check in and understand, similar to what we did for West Lacey, of kind of, what options do we have in terms of the bells and whistles, and what can we include in terms of options. And I guess as part of that, we've seen some significant shortfalls in terms of funding based upon where we're at now and kind of the current cost climate and what we budgeted for. So so we're still kind of working through options, either breaking stuff off or kind of reducing the footprint. So I think we're still working through that and should have more to report next time. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Has the tree issue been settled as far as the department is concerned?
We're talking West Lacey?
Yes.
So that'll really be dealt with specifically in August once we get, so the way this is set up, sometimes firms do it kind of all in-house. Right now they have, we have a traffic consultant doing kind of the 2D, basically the horizontal and vertical tapers. And so they're updating that based upon kind of basically moving where some of the driveways on the west side and kind of clean some stuff up. Then that's going to go to the stormwater consultant, and they're going to actually do the 3D modeling to come up with what the grading limits are going to be, and that's really going to be where those tree impacts are going to be involved. So I'll know more once we start getting in that, but I guess my marching orders are there's a couple of kind of key priority areas that we're going to try everything we can to save the trees and minimize the impact. But I'll probably have more for you guys next meeting about what options it could be. And so I guess the next time, I'll have a check-in next time. Then I guess the next kind of formal resolution would be the TPP, where we would have kind of both what the 60% design looks like and what kind of right-of-way implications are going to be in terms of what our grading limits are, what are the TLEs and the fee areas and that sort of stuff. So does that answer your question?
Any other questions for? All right, we'll proceed then to item 7A, transit update. The staff will discuss their meeting with Metro.
Awesome. I don't know why I closed that. Okay. So share my screen again. So yeah, transit update. So there's kind of two elements. There's the network design study. We're still waiting on Metro to get back to us, and their consultant. Basically, they come up, as I noted in a previous meeting, they've come up with a few options, kind of different extremes, and they're going to share those in a report. And so that should, any week now, that should be coming out, and then we can talk a little bit more about that. So that's kind of on the route, on the service side, and then on the partner agreement, the finance side. So staff met with Metro 614. We talked about partner cost and kind of what that means, additionally with taking over some of the portions of the routes in the town of Madison. And so, there is certainly an interplay with the network redesign study and kind of what the new routes are going to be. But assuming that things, stay the same, at least for the first, or at least for the second half of 2022, they started kind of saying, okay, what would your cost be if we shifted over half of the route from the town of Madison to you, and then we started increasing 3%. And so as part of this larger partner restructuring, they're basically trying to utilize some of the federal stimulus money to build escrows. And so we would have a escrow in 2021 of roughly 90% of our annual operating budget. And so basically with the cost increases from the town and from this 3% increase each year, we'd be able to dip into that escrow to basically soften that blow. And so we haven't gotten the specific dollar amounts yet. The Metro, we basically asked, as part of last January, we asked the state, we kind of notified them we might be wanting to pursue grant funding next year, just to keep that option open. And so we've asked them to kind of show us, currently we get 85/20 state operating assistance through Metro. We could get it separately, similar to what Sun Prairie and Verona do, so directly from the state. And so we've asked for both options. And so I hopefully that uncertainty at the state level will go away in the next month, and I'll be able to show you guys those options next time. And so we'll be able to kind of dive into the weeds a little bit more. But so this is basically all coming out, and we'll have an opportunity to kind of check it out before it gets sent, formally to all the partners as they iron out some of the details. But any questions on that?
I'm sorry, maybe you said this, but where is the money for the escrow going to come from, the 90%?
Yeah, so initially it's going to be the federal stimulus. So they got a bunch of CARES money for Metro specifically was administered it, and they're kind of taking our shares and putting them into escrows. And so some of the other partners have smaller escrows right now, just to try to, I guess the real benefit is it removes some of the variability. The biggest issue I think we've been having is just, we find out halfway through the year that things are going to cost more and that sort of thing, just depending upon market fluctuations and which buses are running. And so, this will definitely kind of steady that out. But yeah, so that money will be coming from the federal stimulus. We won't have to put into that. But then as we kind of turn over, they'll require a 25% of our budget remains in there, basically just making sure there is that buffer in there. And so once we hit that, they'll require a 5% premium on the following year to basically bring it back up. And so, yep. So hopefully that kind of helps. And I think next time when we actually have the numbers, I can get a little bit more specific, and we can just kind of see the picture.
Andrew, would you be so kind as when you do get those numbers to include those in our packets for next time?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
How has the CARES Act affected the BART, or the Rapid Bus Transit System?
I'm not sure. So in terms of, the only one I know that's a go is kind of that east-west line up to Middleton, and west, and east through Madison. But and from my understanding, it hasn't pushed that back any further. So I think that, really the network design study is kind of how does the rest of the network change along with the BRT. So from my understanding, it's still a go and still going ahead on schedule.
Are there any other questions? All right, we'll proceed on to the next agenda item, 7B, Regional Transportation Planning.
So we're missing both Bill and Gabriella. Could we defer this till next month?
Sure.
Any comments or problems?
If people can have a motion to postpone to the next meeting, discussion of this review item.
All right, I'll move that we postpone this 1 month to our next meeting.
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, meeting is postponed to time certain, which is our next meeting. Next agenda item is 8A, which has already been discussed. So we'll proceed on to 8B. Resolution R 1921, approval of the design contract with KL Engineering. Andrew, do you have a discussion for us to start?
Yeah, I think if I help set the scene. So this is kind of a three-parter. Oh, I don't know how well you can see that. So I'll see it now.
Sorry, did I miss if this is an approval item?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I think we do need a motion.
There you
Can I have
So I'll move approval.
Jason is moved. Is there a second? Michael?
Yeah, I'll second then.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Andrew, do you have a discussion for us to lead us off?
Sure. Yeah. So this is kind of a three-parter. So there's the selection of intersection control type. That's kind of number one. What are we building here? The second one, the namesake for the resolution is the approving of the design contract that includes basically the design of whatever intersection control type we're going after. And then the third is kind of a more minor element, but I want to include that, basically as a follow-up to some of the regional stormwater kind of feasibility and different options. We're looking at including a concept design of a regional infiltration basin adjacent to this intersection, just as part of this contract. So those are kind of three parts, and I have a lot of detail. So there's, so online we have an operations report that basically goes into the intersection operations of these options, the crashes, kind of, the cost estimates, and generally, what these would look like. I also included in the packet a kind of a brief memo, just kind of documenting the three options. So with that, I can kind of jump into kind of existing conditions and generally kind of what we're looking at is in terms of options, and then open it up for you guys. If that helps.
Sure. Go ahead.
I have a question, if I can interrupt.
Hold on.
The resolution appears just to be calling for the approval of spending the money, but there's a lot of alternatives or alternates that were in the packet. Are we zeroing in on that, or is that something that we'll be doing next time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I kind of want to do, so I guess the intention of the resolution was kind of a 2-for-1 that we would pack, because I think ordinarily this sort of intersection control might be covered by an ordinance. And so instead of doing that, I can kind of just jump into the resolution itself. So hopefully you guys can see that. So there's a lot of parts to this, but I guess just kind of jumping down to the resolved would be, so this kind of first part is that, to actually approve the design contract of a not to exceed amount of basically 380,000. And then the second one is that approves a staff recommended intersection control of the intersection of Lacey and Seminole. So that would be, as I mentioned, the intersection control. Right now, I mean, I'm going to go through all the options and kind of give what the general staff recommendation is. But I just want to note that they all have pros and cons, and there's a lot of benefits to all of them. So one didn't jump out as a clear favorite, and that's why we're here talking about it. So and then so I'll jump back if it's okay to kind of walk through the options. But yeah, so it's kind of a 2-for-1. One, approve, what are we going to build, and two, approval of the actual design package. And so, there'll be 2 public meetings identified in the design scope. And so there'll be lots of time to kind of refine some of these nuances in terms of, if it's a roundabout, if there's a bypass lane, or if it's a signal, how long the left turn bays are, and all that stuff. And certainly on the Badger State Trail, which is included in this part of the project. But at this point, we're just really looking for intersection control type and general approval of the contract. So with that, I'll jump back.
Michael, does the contract is going to be, is it amendable, or is it going to be a fixed contract once it's signed with a specific option, or will that be part of the design considerations?
Yeah, so right now, how the design contract's built right now is its base option is a roundabout, and there's a, if authorized, task to add signal infrastructure. So basically, we built it kind of flexible, so it costs a little bit more to add the signal infrastructure to do kind of that signal timing, that sort of stuff. But that's all included in the 380,000 as currently proposed. So basically, if you guys want to amend the resolution to have a specific intersection control type in it, you certainly could do that versus the staff recommendation. And you could also, certainly ask for tweaks to design, but I guess the design contract right now is kind of built flexibly so that it can handle these different options.
At this point, we have 2 members of the public. Steve, you are here first. Would you like to present?
Thank you, Troy. Steve Arnold, 2530 Targhee Street. Speaking tonight, I'm representing Bike Fitchburg's Board of Directors, and also Mark Hamilton as an individual. For identification, he's the chair of the city's bicycle committee. And we have agreed on what I'm going to suggest tonight. On 2 of the items, we have no position. I think KL Engineering is a terrific firm, and you should sign the contract with them. And I certainly, the stormwater design, Mars will do a good job on that down the road. We are talking about the intersection control. 3 options have been presented, and you're asked to recommend to the council approval of a resolution that accepts the staff recommendation, but the staff has not really made a recommendation. We would like you to change that. The staff's job is to give you options, and the council, with your recommendation, will select those options based on the community's values, because there will be trade-offs. And the traditional way of designing traffic infrastructure by engineers is to design for high speed so as to minimize delay times and to handle the anticipated volume, and then try to factor in safety, and finally do that within the lowest cost. However, over and over again, when you ask members of the public to rank those things, they rank safety first, then cost, then traffic volume, and finally speed, high speed. And in fact, we have seen in our public meetings a very strong desire of the public to design for lower speeds to improve safety. When you consider the three options provided by staff and the development that's occurring at the area, we think that the Roundabout is the clear best match for our values of safety and cost and handling the traffic flow and keeping speeds down for safety. There are detailed trade-offs that we can give you our opinions on that are mentioned in the staff memo and that staff and I have discussed in preparation for this meeting. But we would like you to amend the be it also resolved clause to specify a roundabout. I believe that continuing to design for three options and delaying the decision will unnecessarily increase the design cost and when the roundabout is the clear best choice. If you use a signalized intersection, you will have a green light by default when traffic is low for one direction, and traffic in that direction will not have to stop. And so any speeding that's involved, and remember we're coming off of west of this intersection, we're going from a 50-mile-an-hour limit to a 35-mile-an-hour limit. So any speeding that's involved will not be mitigated by this intersection. Whereas with a roundabout, there'll be a design speed of 20 and advisory speed of 15 miles an hour as people, even through traffic, will have to negotiate the roundabout. And that will help safety and it will help keep speeds down. It's the lowest cost option and it performs well in both high peak times and low traffic times. So we'd like to see that amendment. The second thing we'd like to see is that the preliminary design has a bypass or slip lane from the westbound leg to the northbound leg, and that is a heavy traffic movement, but the northbound leg only has one lane. This is a single lane roundabout. There is only one lane, and the slip lane provides a second conflict point that drivers already in the roundabout have to negotiate if they're exiting to the north. So that slip lane has only a very insignificant improvement in performance to the right and adds an extra conflict point and makes the roundabout less safe. So we are asking for that to be removed. We also have views on the Badger State Trail intersection, speed limits, and other items, but we'll bring those forward at the time that you're looking for public input on that. Today we just wanted to talk about the intersection control. So that's the second amendment that we would like to have in the draft ordinance, probably a new whereas clause that preliminary design should have the bypass lane or the slip lane removed. That should also decrease the cost of the project, which I understand is a concern. So, are there any questions or clarification or anything?
Not here. I'm good.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much.
We have another member of the public.
Tony.
Can you give your name and address, please?
You bet. First, congratulations, Troy. Tony Hartman, have sat up there. Hi, Rich, Michael, folks that I know. live at 5680 Wayland Road, and I'm a former District 4 alder, and this intersection is in that district. So I also drive through it every day, and if I was going to Rich's house, I would drive through it, so I want to see it be expedient. I will just echo a little bit of what Steve said, and specifically with regards to safety. Interestingly enough, there have been studies that show that roundabouts are between 75 and 80% safer than stoplights. And a biggie for me, there are really four reasons to build a roundabout. The biggie for me is they're green, they save fuel and emissions. WISDOT, if you go to their website, you'll see under roundabouts, they studied 10 intersections in Virginia. I guess they had the most data there between those 10 intersections, 200,000 gallons a year of fuel. So for me, that's a no-brainer. Of course, you want to keep traffic moving, and you can handle more traffic, which is the reason that we're having this discussion, because we already have a four-way stop there. In fact, it used to be just a two-way stop. I believe it was Lacey Road had the stop signs, and it was a through street for Seminole Highway. But I do go through that intersection all the time, and the other biggie is there's fewer moving parts to break with a roundabout. There is an ACS, engineering study that says $5,000 to $10,000 per year. And when I was sitting up there like you guys are now, and I appreciate you're all volunteering your time, we're trying to do this efficiently. And so clearly roundabouts don't have moving parts and don't break down. So that's about it. I am also an avid biker, so as Steve mentioned, I think we need to be smart about how we move pedestrians and bikes through there too. So,
I have a question. I appreciate the bicycling thing, and that was one thing that worries. I'm in favor of roundabouts, but I'm a little concerned with the bicyclists because there is no real way for them to get through. So I've seen it like in my neighborhood, you go out a way of the roundabout and then cross the road and then come back over, and it seems to be avoided. What do you see as the solution for bicycles at that roundabout? What would you like to see?
yeah, so obviously if people are going, north to south or south to north, they're probably going to be on the Badger, but if they are on the road, and I have navigated roundabouts, it is a good idea to have a fog line in there or the ability for a bicyclist to pass through and stay far to the right. And they should have the same rights as a vehicle. And as Steve just mentioned, 15 miles an hour is the recommended speed. A bicyclist can move at that speed through an intersection and really not slow people down. I will say that one of the things is, people learning about roundabouts, and they were invented in England something like 50 years ago or more, and we're still figuring it out here. So people need to learn, just as they do with any other traffic, about moving through those. So as far as bikers are concerned, obviously we're going to have future conversations about how the Badger Trail moves, which will be on the west side of this roundabout, moves through there. But I feel comfortable that cars slowing down to that 15 to 20 miles an hour to navigate the roundabout is going to make it a lot safer for bikes, because the biggie there is just the differential in speeds. For example, if you're riding, south on Seminole, or you're on Wayland, or west, I think Steve mentioned on West Lacey, speed limit now is 50 miles an hour. So cars are passing at 30 to 40 miles an hour faster. Going through the roundabout, it would maybe be a 5 to 10 mile an hour difference. So I feel better about that, Rich, but it's a good question.
Thanks.
Mr. Vice Chair? Yes. Did I also answer that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
I will be brief. Also, I sent members of the commission an email, and I just want to clarify. It's pointed out to me that I gave the wrong resolution number in the title of that email. I mentioned the one that you're going to deal with next, 141, instead of this is 119, so sorry about that. With regard to bikes and roundabouts, like all Wisconsin roundabouts, KL is certified by the DOT to design roundabouts. They have to have certified designers. Every Wisconsin roundabout, and I think that this is probably true nationwide, but I'm not certain of that, has two ways for bicyclists to go through. One of them is that as you approach the roundabout, you see the bike lane becomes dotted, and there is a concrete entrance ramp up to a side path that goes around the roundabout, a multi-use path. And so you have a choice. You can navigate the roundabout as like the motor vehicles and share the lane. There will never be a bike lane in a roundabout. Bicyclists should use the center of the lane and operate at the same speed as the cars, 15 miles an hour, and they can use the lane and they can go around and they properly signal just like a motor vehicle when they want to leave the roundabout. The other option is to take the concrete exit ramp up onto the multi-use path that will surround the roundabout. If you're going to the very next exit, you will find the next leg, you'll find an exit ramp, a concrete exit ramp that goes from the multi-use path down to the bike lane, which starts at that point. And then you're back in the bike lane, or that would be what you would do if the multi-use path becomes a sidewalk, or you could stay on a multi-use path, which will be one of the options here, because one of the legs and probably two of the legs eventually will have multi-use path on one side. So you can either use the concrete exit and entrance ramps and the multi-use path. If you're going more than one leg around the roundabout, then you would use the same crosswalk as pedestrians to cross the leg that you're not exiting on. So that's the way it's worked. There's DOT guidance for bicyclists on how to use roundabouts that explain those two methods, and it's very safe.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet.
Do the members of the commission have any questions for Andrew or?
Yeah, I do.
I've got
Well, go ahead.
I've got a request. The previous speaker spoke of a study that saved 2,000 gallons of fuel for a roundabout. I was just wondering if he could email the transit committee that study. I'd be interested in reading it.
Yeah. Why don't you speak in mic, Tony?
Good question, Jason. So Tony, and I'm acting chair this year of the
Why don't you send
Mike
it to
Fitchburg.
Andrew and he can forward it?
Okay, I can do that. I've got Andrew's email as well, so.
Yep.
It was on the WISDOT website, so hopefully you guys will, be able to quickly get it, but I'll send a link, so.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions for Andrew?
I do. But is there anybody else before I monopolize all this? I prefer the roundabout too. The level of service is improved. There's a lot of benefits, and everybody's going to hate me in my neighborhood for saying I support it, but that's life. But I have a lot of questions. First of all, Andrew, is truck traffic 5% or more of total traffic? Do you know what the percentage of traffic is trucks? Because I know you cannot get into a compact or a mini or any of that roundabouts or you should not, according to a DOT, if 5% or more is truck traffic. Do you know, is that satisfied or are we safe?
So with the quarry access currently used, we're looking at something like 6% of traffic, depending upon which leg you're on.
So
we
we
are over
exceed
that.
that.
And that's why we currently have just a standard single lane roundabout
Okay, good.
with a 100-foot plus inscribed circle.
Well, that was the next. The inside radius or inside diameter is 100 feet. Is that correct?
It's the inscribed circle. It's the outside diameter. But yeah, yep.
So is this similar to the roundabout at Nesbitt and Fitzrona in
Yep,
size?
it would be similar size. That you wouldn't much more similar to versus like the one up on Greenway Cross. So sorry. It's much more similar to the one on Nesbitt than the one on Greenway Cross. That's a mini.
Yeah, my biggest complaint is you need to know whether the guy coming from the left is going to continue or turn.
Right.
And on the smaller
So
roundabouts, you can't see that.
Right. So there would be, there would probably be some sort of truck apron on the outside, but you wouldn't be able to drive around over the center like you would for a mini. So, yep. So and this should accommodate at least a WB50, a kind of smaller semi truck. But once we, if the roundabout is chosen, we be getting more into the specific design.
And will there be a mountable inside for trucks? I forget what you call that. You know what I
It
mean?
likely wouldn't be fully mountable, but there would be that kind of truck apron. I can quickly show kind of a screen that. So this portion in gray would probably be some sort of landscape similar to the Nesbit, whereas the orange would be kind of a truck
Okay,
apron,
good.
type of thing. So
I'm good.
but yeah, we would definitely be accommodating to the 6% plus of trucks that come through here.
And one last point, I agree with Steve Arnold too about that slip lane. I think that would be wonderful if you had 2 lanes that it was feeding into, but it doesn't, and then you're stuck with the same problem you had before, where you have to merge again, and that's a choke point or a potential problem point. So I just want to say I agree with Steve Arnold's point.
Are there any other questions for
I
Andrew?
get a question for Andrew. So what would be the negative of removing that slip lane?
Sure. Uh, So existing conditions in the AM peak, we have roughly 280 right turning vehicles there, and that was measured, pre-pandemic March of 2020. And so I think that was really the justification initially for putting it in. I asked designers to basically give me the operations with or without it, and it really didn't make a large difference. And so for the points raised, I think I would also recommend that that's removed. And I think that's probably when we come to the public for the first public meeting, that won't be included. But it's nice to have the option, at least conceptually, to understand. And yeah, certainly removing that would lower costs and some of the complexity of the intersections. But yeah, in terms of its removal, there would be a slight increased delay for westbound to northbound right turners, but really not that much because, as it was mentioned, there's only one receiving lane there.
Are there any other questions?
One more. Is lighting included? Andrew?
In terms of, yeah, so we would be lighting this intersection similar to the other roundabouts, like at Nesbit, for example.
And that will be dark sky compliant?
Yeah. Yep.
Good.
Yeah. So yeah, we're definitely very sensitive to making sure we're not, causing light pollution, that sort of thing. So yeah, LED and modern, angles and hooding, that sort of thing. So.
Does anybody else have questions? I have some questions and comments for Andrew. I like the single lane roundabout with no bypass lane. I think the bypass lane adds more I am in favor of the single lane roundabout with no bypass lane. I think it just adds complications and encourages slightly more speeding because the width of the circle to navigate is bigger. When I've seen this type of roundabout, I've noticed that people speed through it a little bit faster than if it's a single lane. So I like that idea. For the long run, I like to think about provisions for a conduit for a speed warning sign for eastbound traffic approaching the intersection. There's 2 already on Lacey Road when you're going eastbound and 1 going westbound, and I think that might be a good thing to add, maybe not as in the project, but at least put in the conduit so that they can be added rather quickly and cheaply if the decision is not made to add it at the time of construction. The other thing I like to consider in the design is to have provisions for a flashing yellow sign that bicyclists on the crossing Lacey Road can activate, which there are several examples around the area. I think that's another thing too where, even if it's just putting in the conduit and not to put in the sign during construction would help a lot for future cost mitigation. Does anybody else have other questions for Andrew? Comments?
Do we need to rephrase the original motion to address the fact that we're looking at a single lane roundabout and we support that?
Yeah, we should have someone propose an amendment, and we'll vote on that, and then,
Or who made the motion to begin with? Was that Jason?
No, but anybody can propose an amendment.
All right, I propose that we amend the motion to specify that we're in favor of a single lane roundabout. Troy, do you want to add anything?
yep, no, I'll second.
All right.
Any discussion on the amendment?
Does your amendment include removing the bypass lane?
No, I don't like the bypass lane, but I'm going to defer to the engineers. I have a lot of faith in KL Engineering and a lot of respect for their work. So I think it's something we can work on later, I would think. But as I said, no, just to zero in on the alternate that we were looking at, that we like.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, we'll vote on the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Andrew, could you incorporate that in when you present our minutes to prepare them, and also the recommendation to the council? Thank you.
Yep. So just to clarify, be it in this, be it further resolved that it approves, your recommendation is that it would approve a single lane roundabout at the intersection. So, yeah,
Right.
I can definitely include that.
Yep. Okay. Approved. We're going to vote. Any further discussion on the main motion as amended? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote on the main motion as amended. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried unanimously. We'll proceed to the next agenda item. 8C, Resolution R-141-21, resolution to reject bid for fabrication and installation of exterior wayfinding signage project.
I'll move for the rejection. I'll move for resolution R-141-21 to reject the bid for the wayfinding signage.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion approved and seconded. Is there discussion?
I can share some information. That'd be helpful.
Well, we don't need to.
Okay,
Yeah.
please.
It's pretty straightforward. But yeah, so just like it said in the resolution, we put this out to bid. We did get some bidders, but most of them were high. So we felt like the specs were pretty vague. So want to bring that back. So we're asking for your recommendation to reject the bids, and then we're rebidding now, so that at which point when we get them, we can accept them. So that is, and this is for. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it last time to kind of let you guys know that we're basically looking for 52 wayfinding signs that look similar to this around the city, and so that's what this project is.
Andrew, is this going to be, is there a city policy on signage that this project is adhering to, or have the bidders been able to propose design elements of their own, or is there a common theme that's been suggested?
So basically, I think back in 2013, ZebraDog, we had a consultant undertaken to kind of start this, and then I think in 2019 we got specific dollars associated with this project. So we basically provided them, these mock-ups with some specifics on how these signs are laid out and that sort of thing, and how they're constructed. Some of those details we refined and tweaked in kind of this rebidding, but most of it was laid out by that assign, design consultant, and it's our initial kind of request was a request for proposal, so we had more of that kind of. We were looking for some nuance if there were recommendations. We didn't really get any, so this new one we just went out for a request for quote, just hoping to basically get quotes on what we're asking them for specifically.
Does anyone else have questions? I'm in favor of rejecting the motion as well, before we take a vote. So we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor say
Aye to reject.
aye to reject. Say aye.
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 Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? None opposed. The motion to reject is approved. Announcements. We'll proceed to agenda item 9. The next TTC meeting is scheduled for August 12th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. Does anybody else on the commission have an announcement to make? Okay, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion approved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. The meeting's adjourned at 6:29 p.m.